Our main topic. And let me get my show. Hello everybody, it's Gavin Seim and welcome to the Gavin Seim Show. All right, that was the intro. Now let's talk about the main topic. I think if you are living in the world, particularly if you know of the USA, right? You look at like the US police, their absolute ignorance of law, their total incompetence, their insane up here levels. Can you see that on the camera? Of just being pure psychopaths. Even as somebody who now lives down south in Mexico, when you talk to Mexicanos and they're like, yeah, the police up there are just psychopaths. And I'm like, yeah, I know. The police here are corrupt and they want to get some money off you. But the police in the States will literally just kill you just for their ego and just to prove their point. They're absolute psychopaths. And so knowing that, if you know that Blue ISIS in the US is the number one, the police are the number one most violent criminal organization on the numbers, not just some random made it up. Like on the numbers, they're the biggest, the police departments are the biggest robbers. They're the most violent. They put more people in the hospital than any other criminal organization. And so you say, all right, it can't get worse. It can't get stupider than the police. And then what happens? What happens then? Well, then you go to Atlanta. Then you go to Atlanta, Georgia, and you have the city council of Atlanta who goes in and tears down a dude's house after sending warnings to the wrong address. These guys right here, let's look at these guys. Here's the Atlanta City Council. Don't they look ethnic and diverse? Well, guess what? You're only allowed in the club if you're going to play by the club's rules and support the club's games. Now, let's go back to the headline, because on a basic constitutional level, right? A man cannot be deprived of his life, liberty, and property without due process of law. The right to a trial by jury. All of these things in the Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. That make you your person and your property. They don't make it, they affirm that it is. Because it's that way naturally, that's God-given, that's natural, that's your rights. The Constitution was only written to affirm it, not to give you any rights. And I've done tons of videos on this. The Constitution gives you nothing. It's just supposed to be a reminder like, okay, this is codified that these are your rights. Not that I have constitutional rights. I have rights, and the Constitution also says that. And it recognizes that, right? That's the whole point of a Constitution in any country, is to limit the government. So let's go back to the headline. City tears down man's Atlanta house after sending warnings to the wrong address. So when you start going through this story, and you can go here, for example, and there's news videos on this and stuff that's been done on this, and you can see, if I play just a snippet, right? The house was there and they tore it down. It's just gone. Just gone.
Registry as required by law.
You had to register. Now let me just throw something in here. We're not going to play this whole video because I'll link this video in the comments. For a mainstream Newsies video, it's not too bad because I think it's one of those universal topics that any idiot can agree that the Atlanta City Council are morons. They're assholes. And they have no right to be in any position of power. When you say code enforcement, at least in the US, and I think in most countries in the world, what you actually mean is a criminal syndicate that extorts people by violating their rights, enforcing things without due process of law. Now, I know that's long. Can we do an acronym? Come up for an acronym. A criminal syndicate, crime organization that extorts people using illegal regulations carried out without due process of law. should we ask a chatbot to like create an acronym for this, and then we can change code enforcement to that acronym? Is the only thing I'm thinking. So it gets worse. The city council, the code enforcement guy, this asshole goes out there, and because Atlanta doesn't like vacant houses, right? Now, should there be a process where over like maybe 7 years you can notify, you can put a sign like, hey, this house has been abandoned? But no, this wasn't an abandoned house. It was a house that was being remodeled and that nobody was living in. The code enforcement guy didn't like that there was debris on the property and that the door wasn't secured. So he sent a notice to a completely different address, right? So first of all, like, even if he found a house, even if it was the right address, even if the notices were to the right address, let's get this straight. We have code enforcement that has the authority to invade someone's private property, determine that it's not in compliance with regulations that make the city pretty enough for the kings that rule it, and then can send in a bulldozer to tear down that house after sending out a few letters to you. No trial, no due process, absolute decimation of your property with zero trial, zero due process, when that property is not actually hurting or damaging anyone. Now, if that property was leaking toxic sewage to all the neighbors' houses and they couldn't find the owner and they had to go in and do something about it, maybe you could make a case, right? You cannot make up the level of stupidity of these city councils. It's not like this is limited to the Atlanta City Council, but Atlanta City Council, you are incredibly stupid. And you have no business being in any seat of authority whatsoever. Imagine if you did this, right? So they go in there, the house that they were sending notices to, okay? It gets worse as you go through these things. The house they were sending notices to was in a different zip code. Here's the house, right? And on the right here is just the vacant property. There's been a few videos done on this. Like Dr. Rashid Ritchie did one. This news site did one. This was WSB. Who is this from? Channel 2 Action News did a video on this. That was actually not too bad. I'll link to that on YouTube here. That's the one here. So what happened is, obviously, this guy didn't receive these notices saying, oh, we're gonna tear down your freaking house because there's some debris on the property. Can you believe the level of a society that tolerates? Guys, here's the problem. If the letters had been delivered, that wouldn't have made tearing down the house any more justified. You don't get to destroy someone else's property simply because you're an elected official. Since when did our world, our country, get the idea that when you have an elected position, you get elected to a position and you're sworn to defend and uphold the Constitution, which overrides all civil and municipal codes, and respect people's rights and protect the people, and instead you think you can just make up crap every day to control people's lives and destroy their lives, lock them in prisons, destroy their property, steal their stuff, give it away to police departments, sell it on the open market, and pocket the money. That's not a government. That's not a government, that's despotism. That's not upholding the law. That's not, oh, we have to have it, otherwise there will be chaos. That is chaos. These assholes make it up as they go. And if this guy had received the letters, everybody would be saying, oh, well, he should have respected the law. Maybe the idiots calling themselves code enforcers should have respected the law. I wish we had the code enforcer's name. Does it say that? I don't see the code enforcer's name. I'm guessing he's not wanting to come out. But we do have the Atlanta City Council right here. Here's all these peaches right here looking all diverse and pretty in their suits, while what? They go and tear down your house. And yeah, to top it all off, they billed him for the demolition of his own house. They were sending notices to a different zip code that were then being returned to sender. So imagine if you went in, like you sent a letter, right? Or I sent a letter, like I'm coming into your property and I'm going to blow it up. and you have 3 months to get your stuff out. And like, oh, I sent a letter. It's okay. It's fine. I sent a letter. Imagine if like this idea that you control every aspect of people's lives, right? And this is how government thinks. Government thinks they control every aspect of people's lives. And so when this guy tried to file a claim, the city council, what did they say? The council, let me see if I can do my councilman voice. I gotta get in council mode here. Because I did run for Congress, okay? So I practice speech making. You guys, a lot of you have seen me live, right? I mean, let's get the council mode going. Through deep deliberation, and I've talked with all my colleagues about this because it is a very serious matter. It's really important that we respect people's property rights, that we respect their boundaries, and that we respect this beautiful city. Okay, here comes the quote. But the council has determined that the city cannot accept responsibility for this matter, and therefore cannot pay this claim. Next item on the agenda. All right, so imagine being these a-holes and sitting in your little round room of whatever the Atlanta City Council looks like. You sent dudes through your absolute moron of a code enforcement officer who's a job holder who makes his living harassing other people for nothing in a way that does not improve our society in any way. This fool who's your employee, sends a bulldozer to tear down some random house that was perfectly fine, that was hurting no one, because you saw debris on the property. Because you saw debris on the property. Now just let that sink in for just a second. Breathe it in. There was debris on the property. So you tore down the dude's house. You didn't send him any notifications because you were so stupid that you were not even sending mail to notify him of a problem that you had that you wanted to screw him over for. You were sending it to a different zip code. And then you're the city who did this, and imagine, so you investigate yourself. With this council, this council has determined that the city cannot accept responsibility for this matter, and therefore we cannot pay this claim. Ikiba, more wine. I mean, that's how I envisioned this happening. I might be slightly exaggerating. I doubt these people are actually capable of the facial expressions that I'm representing to you. And these stories, you keep seeing these stories. And yes, ATB, this story is not believable, and yet it is, because this is what our government is doing to people. The police are literally the biggest thieves in monetary dollars of all other theft groups. They have the highest numbers. Our prisons in the US are full of more people, most of them without due process. I have people I know that have been in jail on trumped up charges since before COVID started, and they haven't given them a trial. We're talking 3 years. These are people within my family circle. Because they don't even have evidence to go to trial. They just leave them in jail. And this is what's going on. You have people like Jeff Winehouse, Schaefer Cox, Leonard Peltier. And if you don't like it, the feds will hunt you down, kill your family, and lock you away like they did at Waco, like they did at Ruby Ridge. This isn't a republic in the United States. It's a regime. Now, is that to say that you can go to the next country over and it's better? Well, yes, it's better. There's less extreme things. These extreme things you don't see as often in Mexico, but does it mean that the corruption isn't there and that they won't screw you over? Absolutely not. because the governments are the same all across the world. They are the vilest and the lowest, and they get together in suits and they walk around with toasting glasses and shaking people's hands in the city. And when you try to be the activist and say, wait, you're robbing babies and killing our families, they say, now, you need to use more polite words. We're trying to make this city a nice place. And the society is so mind-bogglingly ignorant that they say, you're just, Gavin, Frank, Jim, you're just making trouble. Why don't you try to get along? Go to the city council meeting and talk to the masters. Petition them. Gavin, we need the town. We don't want people talking bad about the town. You know how many times I've heard this, even here in Mexico? You don't want people talking bad about the town. The president of the county doesn't like what you're saying, Gavin. I've actually heard this even down here in Mexico. The president told me he doesn't like what you're saying, Gavin. You need to just back off a little bit and just let the town do its thing. And I'm tired of it because I can't fight it on my own. I can't fix it because no one across the world, everyone has been so conditioned. We've been so dumbed down and ignorant. It's as if, imagine if you hired me, right? I'm like this guy on the council. You hire me, maybe I'm a contractor on the side because I have the connections, right? That's how you do it when you're on the council. Imagine you hire me to build a house for you, and you pay me a large portion of the money in advance, and I go to the property and I build a doghouse. And I say, here you go. And you're like, I didn't order that. And I'm like, oh, you don't like the doghouse? Well, that violates my policy. And I burn down the doghouse. And then I send you a bill for the gas and the operator of the flamethrower. And I keep the money that you paid me to build the house. That's the Atlanta City Council. That's your police. That's your municipal bodies. That's your state legislators. That's the government you have. And you won't fix it by running for office. I'm not saying it's always bad to do that. I've done that. It started great conversations. But a politician or becoming one of them isn't going to fix it because they're going to make sure that you're not allowed to become one of them until you will mold to them. What you do is you love your neighbor enough to stand up for them, and you stand beside them and you say no. And you stop being cowards. And you stop saying, well, you know what? It's not my problem. I'm going to mind my own business. No, it's your business to stand up against people who are burning your country to the ground and robbing you blind. And that's what government does. And until you say no, government will always exist. There's no way around it. Government's always going to reform in some form or another. It may start out with good intentions to protect the community, and it will continue to grow through people's complacency and laziness and corruption to be more and more corrupt. And so what it means, there's no like, oh, eventually we're going to fix it and then the world's going to be great. You will always have to say no. You will have to fight, but we can't do it alone. I got tired of fighting alone in the U.S. and realizing I'm just going to end up in a prison or dead like the rest of them. Until people are willing to unite as communities and say no. Most people don't do it here, but it happens. There's been entire counties down here that have united against the corrupt government, literally thrown the police, the government, and the cartels out of their county. And the federal government officials, the state government officials, and the police are not even allowed in the county. And it's run by the people. Now, does that mean there's no corruption there? Of course not. Because when something is run by the people, inherently there's some form of government. But my point is, when people say no to rulers and to the government and say yes to caring about their neighbors, to putting themselves on the line to defend their neighbor who's getting their door kicked in and saying, wait, what's happening here? And when the community surrounds the violators, the rapists, and the thieves that in this era have come to be called government, military, and police, that would be how we would make change. And that's That's all I have to say. Atlanta City Council is just an example of the unmitigated stupidity combined with unrestrained corruption and zero accountability that we see flooding the United States and spreading across the world. All right, peace, you guys. You have a good night.